Hi beautiful people, today I'm going to make a tutorial on how to cut female pants. And for you to cut female pants, there's some necessary measurements that you'll be needing. The first one, you have your hip, you have your thigh, you have your waist, you have your crotch depth, you have your crotch length, you have your knee, you have your calf, you have your ankle, you have your trouser length, you have your hip depth. Now for instance, I'm working with waist 27, hip 41, thigh 26, crotch length 27, crotch depth. Now for you to get your crotch depth, you can actually tell your client to sit down and take the measurement. So you're going to tell your client to sit down, then sit on the stool, then take the measurement from your waist to the hip, where the hip stop before the stool. That you can record it as your hip depth, your crotch depth rather. But in case you don't take it, you can actually use your hip measurement. You're going to divide your hip measurements by 4. Or so for instance, I'm working with hip 41, but I'm adding 1 inch rather for hip. So that will be 41 divided plus 1, that's 42. So 42 divided by 4, then I'm having 10.5. And when I sat on a stool and I took my crotch depth, it was exactly 10.5. Now, or sorry, this one's supposed to be 175. Sorry, 175. So 0.175 times 27. I'm having 4.725 plus 6, so that's 10.725. So but I prefer using my hip divided by 4, or I will ask the client to sit down and take the crotch depth. So the next one, you are going to get your crotch extension. So for you to get your crotch extension for the front, you can use these two methods. The first is to divide your hip by 16, or you use your thigh measurement. Now let me try to sketch it here. For instance, as I said step 1, you add 1 inch to your hip for ease. I said that earlier. Then you're going to divide it by 4. I'm working with hip 41 plus 1, that's 42. So 42 divided by 4, so I'm going to have what, 10.25. So that means my crotch depth is what, 10.5 rather. Then the next one, you are going to add 1 inch to this, your 10.5. That's 11.5. Please don't get it wrong. To get your crotch depth, you are going to divide your hip by 4, which my hip is actually 41, but for his I added 1 inch, which is 42, divided by 4, that's 10.5 rather. Then the next thing, I'm going to form a bust using this 10.5. So this is my crotch depth, which is 10.5. I'm going to sketch it out. Then the next one, you are going to form a bust. He said hence 10.5 will form our crotch depth, then add 1 inch to that 10.5 equals to 11.5. Therefore form a bust or a rectangular shape with 10.5 by 11.5. So that means this one will now be what, 11.5. So, and that is what I tried to sketch out here. So this place, so that means A to C and B to D will represent our what, crotch depth, while A to B will represent to our what, our width. Now the next step is we've labeled the bust. So on line D, which is this line, mark your crotch extension. Remember I told us that our crotch extension is what, 1/6 times hip, or you measure your thigh measurement. I prefer to measure the thigh measurement because sometimes I don't want to say some people have a regular shape, but sometimes it does not really work that for some people. So the best thing is to take your thigh measurement. Actually my thigh is 26 divided by 2, that's 13. And when I divide my hip by 16 here, I still get extension of what, almost 3 inches, because 42, because remember my hip is 41, but I'm adding 1 inch to it, that's 42 divided by 16, that's like 2.6. So that definitely I can run this one up to what, 3 inches. So, and that means from D to here now I'm adding extension of what, 3 inches. You can actually use that 2.6, but it's preferable you use your 3 inches. Then the next step here, you are going to do centralization. So from C to E, so definitely from my C to E I'm using 13, because if this days I'm using 13, you can use 13, you can use 13, because when you add 3 to your 11.25, so you'll be having like 14.5. But okay, let's add it to 2.6. So 11.5 plus 2.6, so this is like 14.1, so that's like 14. So let's go with 14. So you're going to do centralization. So that means from C to E, you're going to have your what, 14. So you're going to do centralization for this. Yes, you're going to do centralization. Remember I said my hip is what, 41. I added 1 inch to it, that will be what, 42. And anytime you add 1 inch to your hip, you are definitely going to add 1 inch to your thigh. Yes, so my thigh is what, 26 divided by 2, that's 13. And even if I should add 1 inch to it for it, it's still going to be what, 14. So we are still correct. So the next thing I'm going to do centralization. So from C to E is 14, so divide that 14 by 2, that's 7. That means from here to here will be 7 inches, from here to here will be 7 inches. Now the next thing here is to what, measure your knee length from F to G. This is our F to G. So your knee length, for instance, the knee length I'm working with is 21, so you're going to subtract that 1.5, because the 1.5 will be standing as a band. So I'm going to subtract 1.5 from the 21 inches. That means we're having what, 19.5. So from here I'm going to measure to this place, I'm going to measure 19.5. Then the next one, this G, we are making this G as the trouser length. You're going to take your ankle measurement. If your ankle measurement is 13, that means 13 divided by 2, that means you're going to have 16.5. So that means that's 16, you're going to have 6.5. So that's 6.5, you're still going to divide it into 2. That means you're going to have what, 3.25 here, 3.25 here. Then if your knee measurement here is probably 18, so that means you're going to divide this by 2 again. That means you're going to have 9. So that 9, you're still going to divide this by 2, which will give us 4.5 here, 4.5 here. And remember, we've already gotten 7 here, 7. Then we're going to connect the line together. So the next thing here is we want to get, so step 4 on line AC. This is our line AC. Measure your hip depth. Yes, So our hip depth is very important. Minus 1.5. I know some people measure it directly without subtracting 1.5 from it. It's still okay. But since I'll be adding band, I prefer to subtract my 1.5. So you're going, or better still, you can divide. Remember, my hip depth is 9. So if my hip depth is 9, that will be 9 minus 1.5. So I'm going to have 7.5. So definitely from here to here will be 7.5. Or better still, you can divide AC by 3. That means if AC is 10.5 divided by 3, here we've gotten 3.5. So that means I'm going to subtract 10.5 minus 3.5 minus 3.5. So we have 7. So here we can see that the difference is just 0.5. So it's either you go up by 3.5 or you come down by 7.5. I think this is clear. So the next one, you try to what, curve your line. Then I said something, I wrote something rather that on line B, you come in by 0.5. So from this center line, you are not going to connect it straight. You're going to come back by 0.5. Then you can now take your waist measurement, then add your sewing allowance, which is 1 inch, then connect it well. So now let's move on. I want to draft it. All I've said, I want to put it into practice. I've drawn the bust, and how did I get the bust? I divided by the hip by 4. 41 plus 1 divided by, that's 42 divided by 4, that's 10.5. So that means the crotch depth is what, 10.5. Remember, I added this, I left this half inch because of the joining I'm going to use to join the trouser with the band. So this is my 10.5 now. Then for this is what, 10.5 plus 1, that's 11.5. So the next thing here now is to, then from here to here is my hip depth minus 1. So my hip depth is 9 inch. So 9 inch minus 1.5, because of the 1.5 is for the band, which is what, 7.5. As I said earlier, some people don't remove it, which is okay, but I do remove mine, which is still going to give us the same result. So this is 7.5. So the next thing, now let's move to the crotch extension. So I said you can actually, I said we have some irregular people. When I mean irregular people, there are some people that by the time you added the crotch extension, when you divide your hip by 16, it's not going to be enough for their tie. For instance, you have someone with tie 30, and by the time you add, that means 30 divided by 2, that's 15. So everything you're supposed to have 15, but by the time you add your crotch extension, everything, you're getting like 14. That means that you need to use their tie measurement. But for mine, is okay. So that means my crotch extension, which is 16, divided by I've done the measurement the other time. That's 42. I'm using 42 now because I added 1 to the hip. And I said anytime you added 1 to the hip, definitely they're going to be like addition of 1 each to the thigh. So that's 42. So 42 divided by 6. So I have 2.6. So then I will now add, that means here I will have what, 2.6. By the time you add everything together, you'll be having like 14. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but by the time added everything together, that's like what, 14. So which is still not bad. That means we have heels at the tie. As I said earlier, the tie round is what, is 13. So by the time we sew it and everything, that means at the end of the day there will be heels. It will not just be very fitted, there will be heels. But that means, but if you want it so fitted, you don't want ease, that means you'll be using the 13. But because this one I want ease, that's why I'm making use of the 14. So and we label this extension to be our what, E. So the next one, we are going to do centralization. So that means I'm going to divide this by 2, which is going to give us 7. So also, so I'm going to measure 7. So I've done the centralization all the way down. You can extend this line to the upper part. So you can extend the line, which is 7 too. So yeah, this is where we are going to take our dad's measurement. So the next thing now, you want to take your knee measurement. As I said earlier, I'm working with knee 21. So 21 minus 1.5. So I'll be having what, 19.5. This is 19.5. Then I'm going to mark your straight line. So here we label the knee as inch. So the next one, we're going to take the new round is actually 18, but because I'm working with a free pant, so I would love to work with 20. So that means 20 divided by 2, that's 10. That means I'm still going to divide the 10 by 2. That will be what, 5. Then the length of this pattern is not enough for the length I'm working with, so I'm going to be added the other one on the fabric. So the down part 2 I'm going to be using is a straight pant. I'm going to be using 5.2. Remember, if you're working with a fitted pant, so for instance, if your ankle is 13, you're going to divide by 2, that's 6.5. Definitely be having 3.25 here. 3.25 here, that would be 6.5. Because I'm working with a straight pant, so that is why I'm having 10 here. Then you are going to connect this line together. as I've explained earlier, that on line B I'm coming in by what, 0.5. So I'm going to come in by 0.5 here. Then I'm going to connect it to this line. Then I'm going to use this line pattern master to connect the other line. Some people can measure 1 to 1.5, so this is like exactly 1 inch. So then the next thing is to take my, so I want to decide if I want that or not. So if I want that, that means I will put the that half here, then whatever. So from this line I'm going to measure, we have roughly 3.5. The weight I'm working with is 27 divided by 4, that will be 6.75. So already here, from here to here, we got now 3.5. So 3.5, so that this is 6.75. Then I'm going to be adding extra 1 inch for what, for the sewing allowance, or better still, you can just mark everything here. This one is giving me, this one will give us 7.75 because I've added the that allowance. Then now add your sewing allowance. So the next thing is to connect this. Remember, this is serving as our hip plus 1 inches. And the hip we're working with is 41 plus 1, that's 42. So 42 plus 1 inch, and that 1 inch serves as our sewing allowance. We should have 11.5. So you can see that we are correct, 11.5. So at the end of this, after we sew it, we should have 42.5. That means when you put it on, there will be ease to not be too fitted. But if you want fitted clothes, or if you're working with a stretchy material, there's no need for you to put on ease. Just use your hip measurement. So there's no need for you to put additional extra 1 inch. But if you're working with Ankara or any other fabric that is not stretchy, please, I would advise you to add at least 1 inch for ease. So the next thing is to connect this with this. So now we want to connect this. So I've connected this, but I'm not working, I don't like seeing sharp edge, so I'm going to blend this part. So I'm going to blend it. Yeah, so the next thing is to connect this with these two. So I prefer using this piece. So we are done with the front pants trouser. I hope you can see, it's very simple. Now I don't know, most of the time I do this to avoid bulge at the zipper area, though I've not decided whether I will be putting front zip or back zip. But I love to come down by 1 inch or 0.5. But then I will measure the crotch length for the front. I'm having 12.25. So I have 12.25. So I will have to come down by 0.75. You can come down by 1 inch depending. You can come down. So let's cut it out. So now I want to cut the back pattern. So I use this front pattern to trace the back pattern. So the next thing I want to do some alternation. So because, like I said earlier, that for the crotch extension you can add 2.5 to the front. So that means, remember I added 2.6 the other time, so 2.6 plus 2.5, I'll be having like 5.1. So and you can do it like this. You can divide your hip, which is 42, because I'm using 41, remember, but I added 1 inch is divided by 8. Sorry, 42. So this one is giving 5.25, and 2.5 plus 2.6, that's 5.1. So we are still on the same page. So this is 2.5. Then remember, this is my hip line. This is my hip line. So on this hip line, on this waistline, I'm coming in by 1 inch. Then I'll connect it back to this line. Then I'll now connect this line to this 2. Add the 2.5 added there. I will explain again. So this is now new crotch for the back. The first thing I did, I actually traced out the front pattern, which is the initial line. The next thing I added 2.5 extension for the back. Then the next thing I tried to draw out my hip line. Then on this waistline I come in by 1.5. Then now connected. I use my straight glass to connect to this thing. Then use my cuff to connect it to this. Now the next thing now, once we put our waist measurement, remember our waist measurement is 6.75. 27 divided by 4, that's 6.75. Plus 1 inch for that, that's 7.75. Then plus another 1 inch for sewing allowance. So I'm going to connect this back to this piece. Remember I said the crotch length is what, 27. So for the front, I think we've gotten 11 point something thereabouts. 11.5. So I'm going to measure it. Remember, we're adding 1.5 for the band. So we are going to measure this. So I'm having 14 already. So 14 plus 11.5. 14 plus 11.5. Remember, there's allowance there for the joining. So 14. So having like 13.5 plus 11.5. That will be like 25. That means we still have extra 2 inches. So, and that's 25 plus 3, because 1.5 for the waistband, that's 3. So 3 plus 25, that's 28. So it's too much for this person. So the next thing, we're still going to reduce the front crush by maybe extra 0.25 or extra 0.5. And then for this particular trouser, there's no need for us to come up again, because if we are going to come up again, the crush is going to be bigger than the size or bigger than the model. But assuming the way we have 25 here and the model is using like crush 30, then we can now come up by 1 or 1.5. So we don't just assume that, oh, because it's back, we just had 1 inch rise. No, you have to calculate the crush length you are working with. Some you don't need to come up by 1.5 or 1 inch. Some you just have to maintain it. Like this person, we don't need to come up, or we just need to even reduce the front a little, because we've gotten the crush length already. So the next thing is also add the sewing allowance, and the sewing allowance I use here is 2 inches. So the sewing allowance, you can either add it to the front or add it to the back, or you know add it to both sides. Maybe you're adding like 2 inches for the sewing allowance. You can split it 1 inch and 1 inch. I prefer to add it to the front, so you can add it to the back, you can split it. Anyone, you're still on the same page. So